All right, so quickly I want to share my story with you. I wasn't raised in a Christian home, had no Christian upbringing whatsoever. In fact, I was raised in an environment that was surrounded by drugs, alcohol, an atheistic environment, domestic violence. I had no inclination that there even was a God. My mom is a staunch atheist still to this day. In fact, she would probably go more toward Scientology. She believes we came from aliens and that one day the mothership's coming back and all of that stuff. And so God was never spoken of in the home. In fact, the only time I heard about God was going to primary school and enrolling in religious education. The RE teacher was a Presbyterian minister from a church in a small country town, and I never really knew anything about it. And he started to talk to us about Christianity. At first I thought, we don't come from God, we come from monkeys. Then a friend of mine said, no, we actually come from penguins. So I started to sit at the back of the class and heckling this preacher who come in to do religious education. I'm like, bro, we came from penguins. You don't know what you're talking about. And kind of puts a whole new spin on the movie Happy Feet, doesn't it? But realistically, I didn't have a clue. I just thought in my heart, God's not real. And if God is real, he was never there for me. And so I kind of was raised with that mentality. At the age of 3 years old, after 7 years of domestic violence, my mum took me, my twin brother, and my older sister, and she did the Harry Holt. She bolted and ran away from Dad. Well, he was at work one day. So my dad was a violent alcoholic, an amphetamines addict, and you probably experienced some people from that demographic. It's not a good combination. And so when my dad got drunk in extended bouts of amphetamines and staying up for 3 days straight, he became incredibly violent. And so my mum used to tell me these stories about my dad. We never used to see him. She used to say, your father's a monster and you don't want to know him. But regardless of these stories, there was something in my life growing up as a young boy without a dad that was missing. You know, regardless of what my mom told me about him, there was a longing in my heart to know my father. And growing up without a dad is no way for a young man to grow up. So I was disillusioned and hear stories of my dad's abusive. And so long story short, by the age of 12, I was a binge drinking alcoholic. By the age of 14, I was a full-blown drug addict. And by the age of 17, I was totally suicidal. Now, 12 years old, I wanted to go to a party. And I'm not talking of, fairy floss and clowns. I mean like an adult party. And I was in a small country town in Victoria. So I'm getting my push bike ready. I'm making this torch. Like not a flashlight, but like a torch with like cotton dipped in petrol on the end of a stick, because I got to ride 2 hours from my country town to the next country town to get there. I'm 12 years old. My twin brother comes out in the backyard. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm making a torch and I'm going to ride to a party. And he said, you're a beeping idiot. And so we started punching on in the backyard, rolling around on the grass, and Mum comes out with the commotion. What's going on out here? Two twin boys are punching on the ground in the grass in the backyard, and Jace, my brother, says he wants to go to a party, to such and such's party tonight. And Mum's like, there's no way you're going. So I thought, you know what, stuff my brother, stuff my mum. I'm calling Dad, I'm gonna go and live with him. Now, Dad had come into our life and we were seeing him on a fortnightly basis. And here's the deal, my dad was remarried and his wife, he nearly beat her to death on their wedding night. In fact, I remember getting ready to go to the party, the wedding, and me and my brother were just running amok, all excited, Dad's new wedding. He was already drunk before the wedding. He grabbed my brother's head, and just smashed him together. And I just remember bang, seeing stars and recollecting, I don't think that that's how your father's supposed to act on his wedding day. And so, anyway, when he nearly beat her within an inch of her life on the wedding day, she said to him the next day, all beaten up and swollen, if you don't stop drinking and taking drugs, I'm out. So my dad cleaned himself up. And when he cleaned himself up, he got in contact with us children. So once a fortnight, I'd have fortnightly visits with him. And I didn't see the monster that my mum told me about. I saw a clean man, a sober man, a good man, a father that I wanted in my life. And so I said, you know what, Mum? I'm going to live with Dad. And seeing the difference between what she said he was like and what I experienced when he cleaned himself up, the only thing I thought was my mum's a liar and she didn't want me to have a relationship with my dad. So I'm out of here. I call him up. I said, Dad, I want a break from Mum. I'm going to come and live with you for 6 months. So he picks me up halfway. We get in the car. I said, you know, Dad, I'm just staying for 6 months. You know, there's still my twin brother's back there, my mum's back there, my sister's back there. I remember looking at him in the revision mirror. He's looking at me. I can just see his eyes. I said, Dad, just 6 months. And he said, Matt, you're not going back ever. I waited your whole life for this phone call. You are never going back to your mum. And I remember just sitting there in the back seat looking at him thinking, I just got kidnapped by Dad. Not much I can do about it, so we just suck it up. And he didn't let me talk to my twin brother and my mum for 2 years. No phone calls. He was afraid that if I called them, that, I'd try and organise for them to come and pick me up. And so growing up in Melbourne, surrounded by drugs and alcohol, it was inevitable. An alcoholic, a drug addict. Now, life ran its course. Things got real bad. Incredible domestic violence. My dad used to discipline me with headbutts, strangle me on the bed, kick me, beat me. I remember my face split open one day, blood pouring out of my face. Dad's got both his hands around my neck. I'm on the bed and I'm about to black out, and I'm thinking to myself, this is it, and I'm going to die. And at that point, I'm about 14 years old. Now, I get a job, and I'm trying to hold down a job, working for a printer company. I'm a drug addict. I got a lifestyle of domestic violence that's happening at home. No one knows about it. I'm totally suicidal. And one day, they're doing the Christmas celebration at the end of the year for the company that I was working for. And so I go to the Christmas celebration. Here I am, 17 years old at this time. 3 years of incredible domestic violence. And just totally living in fear. I used to take as much drugs as I could when Dad was out at the TAB, because I knew when he came home at 10 o'clock that night, I was going to be a punching pillow. So I just wanted to take as many drugs as I possibly could so that it wouldn't hurt as much. And so just kind of self-medicating and trying to escape the fear. Just lived in that place every single day for 3 years. Here I am, Christmas celebration. Now, I hope most of you don't know this, but the truth is, a lot of you probably do. Alcohol makes you tell the truth. It's a little bit of a, truth serum. And so I'm blind drunk at the Christmas celebration. I'm 17 years old. The general manager of a multi-million-dollar company's there. I'm at the table with him. People are starting to leave, and I'm telling him everything about my whole life. And I'm crying, and in the little inkling at the back of my mind, thinking to myself, I'm probably going to get fired because he's going to know that I'm a messed up person and life's not going good, and I could be detrimental for his company. And everyone's left, and it's just me and him sitting at this table. About 10 o'clock at night, I'm blind drunk, I'm crying, I'm telling him my life story. My dad beats me violently. Haven't spoken to my mom and my brother. He says to me after I'm finished, I'm expecting him to say, you know what, you need to see a doctor and get yourself cleaned up, and when you get your life sorted out, come back and see me. But instead he looks at me opposite that table. He says, you know what, you don't have to go back to that ever. In fact, I've got a house here on my property, and you can move into it, and you can stay there tonight, and we'll get all your stuff sorted out. Long story short, he gave me a promotion in the company. I became the production supervisor, soon to be the production manager of a multi-million-dollar company in Melbourne. And life just looked incredible. Life all of a sudden looked like there was hope, that there was a difference. I left Dad. I called him 3 days later. He said, where the beeping heck are you? I said, Dad, you know where I work. You can come and get me if you want. If we want to go fist to fist, we'll go fist to fist. See, I lived in fear and terror, but having escaped that and even spending 3 days away from that, knowing I got my freedom, I was ready to fight for it. And I was a boxer in those days and was an amateur boxer. And Dad started to get afraid of me towards the end. So I said, you can come and see me at work if you want to. And so he's like, you're just like your mother. She left. I said, no, my mum left and went in hiding. You know where I am. So about 2 weeks go by. My dad rocks up to work one day. I'm not expecting him. He comes around the corner. And I just shape up to him straight away. I'm ready to punch on. He's like, whoa, it's okay. It's okay. Went for a walk around the block, and he said, I understand you've made a decision to leave, and I'll come and drop your stuff off. Long story short, okay, I'm trying to just cram this in. Here I am, a new lease in life. I'm away from the domestic violence, but there was a problem in my heart that followed me everywhere I went, and that problem is what the Bible calls sin. There was a nature within me to continually rebel against the God I didn't know, and that's why there was a wake of destruction in my past. That's why there was a wake of destruction in my father's past. That's why there's a wake of destruction in my mother's past, and it was sure to follow me. And even though circumstances changed, this thing in my heart followed me absolutely everywhere. I got into a relationship with a girl. We were together 3 months, the love of my life at that time. She dumped me for some other guy, and I thought, you know what? I'm done. I'm finished. I go back to my boss's property in the middle of nowhere, small little bungalow, shed, house in his acreage. I'm sitting down in this small tin shed, TV's on, volume's all the way down, Phillips head screwdriver on the bench in front of me. I'm hating on life, hating my mum, hating my dad, hating this drug addiction I can't get free from, hating my hopelessness, hating this girl that's just broken up with me, and I'm done. All of a sudden, I feel an evil presence come into the room. At that time, I've got no paradigm for what a demon is, but I felt a physical spirit come into the room. I couldn't see it, I couldn't smell it, but I could sense that it was there, and its intent was to kill me. And all I could feel was pure evil from this thing toward me. It began to take over my mind. I looked at the Phillips head screwdriver in front of me, and right when I'm about to grab it, I want to grab it and just as fast as I possibly can, as many times as I can. I know it's going to hurt, but there's a rage. Bang, 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 and just whatever the aftermath is, I'm out, I'm done. I got no hope, and I don't care. Right when I'm about to grab the screwdriver, all of a sudden the atmosphere in the room shifts. The book of Romans chapter 10 verse 20, which I wouldn't read until years later, is God speaking prophetically for the prophet Isaiah, and he says that I was found by a people that never looked for me. And I wasn't looking for God. I had no inclination of God. Like I told you, I thought we come from penguins. But right when I'm about to kill myself, the atmosphere in the room shifts. All of a sudden, I'm aware of God. I don't know how else to explain it, but I can tangibly feel the presence of God. I ran outside the room. I look up into the stars. It's about 12 o'clock at night, and I cried out to God with all of my heart. I said, God, if you are real, then I need you to help me. And I'm telling you the truth. As God is my witness, that day at 17 years old in that small country town in Victoria, I heard the voice of God. God spoke to me. He called me by my name. He said, Matthew, everything is going to be okay. All of a sudden, an intense peace filled my heart. I remember just standing there looking at the general manager's house thinking, should I just go and tell him what happened? And I'm thinking, I don't think so. There's another guy, another supervisor of the management team, and he's over down there on the other end of the property. And I look down at his house and I think, should I go and tell him? I just remember thinking, God just spoke to me. I walked into my bed, climbed under the blankets, and slept like a baby. Had the best night's sleep I ever had in my life. Now, here's the deal. Just conscious of the time. I wish that in that moment I could tell you that everything changed, but it didn't. But God spoke to me, an anchor for my soul, knew me by my name. I didn't go looking for him. He found me and promised me that somehow, some way, everything was going to be okay. 3 years would go by. Violence spinning out of control. Alcoholism, drug addiction spinning out of control. Between a rock and a hard place. I couldn't kill myself because I knew that if I did, I would go to hell. No one ever told me that. I knew it inherently. I now know it to be true because of the scriptures. But then I knew it inherently. So I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, not actually knowing who this God is that spoke to me, but clinging to a promise and a hope that somehow, some way, everything would be okay. Fast forward, 3 years go by. I'm at Work for the Dole. How many of you know what Work for the Dole is? Okay, 2 people. That's good. So it's a Centrelink program, and if you don't get a job and you bludgeon off them too long, they make you go and work for them. And so they nominate charities, and I had to go and work. So I'm building bikes and toys for disabled children, and there's a man by the name of Robin Gagai. If you're watching it, love you, bro. And he was a Torres Strait Islander, spent 6 years in prison for beating police officers, got out, met Jesus at Broad Beach on the Gold Coast, right on the beach, and got radically saved, radically born again, become an incredible evangelist overnight. In other words, his whole passion was to share the gospel. And he comes with his guitar, Work for the Dole, and he's strumming that thing away. He had dreadlocks, and I didn't have them back then. And I just remember looking at this dude, tattoos, rough-looking dude, Torres Strait Islander, playing his guitar, waving his dreadlocks around, singing about Jesus. And I just remember thinking, you are a full-blown tripper. Like I've never met, apart from the Presbyterian preacher before, I never met a Christian. You know, I'm thinking, that's what a Christian is. I'm not sure I want to be one. And so, long story short, I'm a rapper, he's rapping about Jesus. He finishes his rap, and I said, you know what? I believe in God. He said, really? I said, yeah. I said, he spoke to me 3 years ago, promised me everything would be okay. He takes that opportunity, grabs me by the hand, takes me down to the park outside of Centrelink in Nerang, and he says, today you're going to give your life to Jesus. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know what that means. All I know is you spent 6 years in prison for beating police officers, and I'm going to give my life to Jesus. was he going to pull out a knife and sacrifice me to his God or something? I'm kidding. But there was a peace in my heart, and so I prayed to Jesus for the first time. Now I could wish that I could tell you that everything changed, but it didn't. 9 days went by, life as usual. Wake up one day with a hangover. I remember this guy's church is just around the corner. They've been praying for me in a discipleship program for 2 weeks straight. Every single morning, 7 o'clock, whole house praying for me. So I wake up, hangover, decide I'm going to go to church. Now I'm expecting a Catholic service, white collar, black robe, traditional music. It's pretty good, wasn't it? That's what I was expecting. I rock up. Here's this dude that led me to Jesus spinning on his back on the altar, doing breakdancing, windmills. Everyone's jumping up and down. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, he's not the only tripper. The whole church is full of them. Like this massive smile on their face, like, why are you so happy? Woman comes up to me, shakes my hand. How you doing? Welcome to Set Free Christian Church. And I'm thinking that smile is way too big for this situation. And so she shows me to my seat. I sit in my seat. Here's the deal. The pastor preached a message, and I don't remember what he preached on. But at the end, he did what I'm about to do in a minute. He gave an altar call for people to receive Jesus into their life, to receive God's forgiveness and salvation that comes through faith in him. He said, if you're here today and you know that you don't know God, you know that you need your sins forgiven, then right now step out of your seat and come forward. Now, I'm not going to be so bold as to do that to you today. But I stepped out of my seat, went forward, and had the most dynamic, powerful encounter with God that I have ever had in my life. Immediately, God was on top of me. And I knew in that moment that something radical had to shift. Otherwise, I was sure to go to hell. But I didn't realize that that shift would come from him changing me instead of me trying to change myself. And all of a sudden, I felt the power of God go inside of me as though Jesus himself stepped inside of me. And all I can tell you today is this, that from that moment until now, my life has never been the same since. Yeah. Overnight, I was totally set free. I was drug and alcohol free. All the chains fell off. The burden of sin lifted off of my shoulders. I became a brand new person. Yeah. And I have never looked back from that day until now. There's a fire in my heart because I know that he who promised is faithful. He promised me everything would be okay. He knew me by my name. And I want to tell you today, God knows you by your name. And he promises that if you would surrender your life to him and accept his forgiveness through faith in his son Jesus, that he would radically set you free. He did it in my life. And if he did it in my life, he can do it in yours. Now, you might not be a drug addict and you don't need to be. But the Bible says that all of us have sinned and have been separated from God. And there is a day of judgment coming because God is holy. But let me tell you the good news. He sent Jesus to die for our sins, to receive the punishment that we deserve, to pay the price we couldn't pay. That through faith in him, God raised him from the dead on the third day. And whoever calls on his name will be saved, will be forgiven. I can't stress that to you enough right now. There's people here right now and you need to experience this love. You need to encounter him. You need to experience his forgiveness. You need to put your trust in Jesus and be set free. I'm telling you, friends, God doesn't favor me over anyone else. If he can do it for me, he can do it for you. We've heard many stories, I know, over the weeks that you would have been here of lives that have been changed. And right now, I'm going to ask all of you to close your eyes right now. Because I want to be bold right now. See,